Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a seriously fascinating, zoomed-out look at the very fabric of human connection. We're going to explore how language and culture, well, they aren't just a bunch of static rules sitting in some dusty textbook. No, they're living, breathing entities, and they're dynamically shaped by the actual physical world around us. We'll see how our environment, our history, and our deep-seated traditions literally echo through every single word we speak and every gesture we make. So get ready, because what we're about to cover is absolutely going to change the way you look at human communication.
Okay, let's dive into this. Did you know that cold weather literally changed the way we speak? I mean, it sounds almost like science fiction, right? But this isn't just some fun out there theory. It is a profound biological and linguistic fact. The literal temperature of the air our ancient ancestors breathed actively rewired the mechanics of how human beings communicate. Moving into our first section, the environment shapes the voice. So the words we speak are intrinsically tied to the geographical landscapes we inhabit. Basically, we don't just speak a language, we speak our geography. When human languages were developing in warm tropical climates, they naturally leaned toward open, highly resonant vowels. And if you think about it, why? Because in warm air, those big, voluminous sounds travel beautifully and effortlessly over long distances. But if you look at freezing cold regions, it is a completely different story. That icy, dry air actually restricts your vocal cords, making it physically difficult for them to vibrate. So as this brilliant evolutionary adaptation to protect themselves from extreme weather, people in freezing environments developed closed, careful, and much less voluminous phonetics. The weather itself literally sculpted the sound of their voice. Which brings us to Section 2, the power of the inaudible. You know, learning a language's vocabulary is really never enough. And that's because our physical bodies communicate absolute volumes before a single syllable is even uttered. And this contrast brilliantly illustrates that point. In traditional Japanese culture, silence within a conversation isn't just empty space. It's a revered pause. It represents inner peace, wisdom, and a highly respectful moment to just process the message. But compare that to a typical setting in Colombia, or really much of Latin America. Down there, silence can feel pretty uncomfortable. Instead, the cultural norm is this energetic, highly dynamic exchange where overlapping chatter and even interrupting one another are totally normal. It's not considered rude at all. It's actually just a sign that you're fully engaged in the conversation. And we see this exact same cultural mirroring when it comes to where we look. So in Latin America, maintaining steady eye contact is exactly how you signal that you're paying attention. It's a fundamental sign of respect. But if you travel across the globe to Japan, that exact same behavior completely flips. Staring directly into someone's eyes can be seen as profoundly disrespectful, even challenging. To show respect, the norm is to actually lower your gaze to the level of the other person's neck. So, depending on your hemisphere, a simple glance can either build a really deep connection or cause some pretty serious offense. Now, this brings us to a specific term you should definitely know: emblems. Emblems are physical hand gestures that contain hidden, culturally specific meanings based entirely on geography. They're basically the ultimate proof that you can speak perfectly with your hands, but, well, only if you know the local code. Now, what's really interesting here is how we can look at a gesture you probably use all the time. The O hand gesture, right, where you join your thumb and index finger. In Latin America, flashing this means perfect or excellent. But if you use that exact same physical movement in Japan, it carries a polar opposite meaning. There, it's the universal symbol indicating that you need money. It is the exact same physical geometry, but with a completely different cultural translation. And it's not just hand gestures. It's our most basic facial expressions, too. Take Japan, for example. A smile isn't always an expression of joy. Actually, it often serves as a sophisticated cultural tool to mask sadness or frustration. It's a way to maintain public moderation, harmony, and respect, rather than just broadcasting your internal happiness to the world. It really just goes to show how culturally coded our emotions actually are. Let's move into Section 3, One Language, Infinite Worlds. All right, let's zoom out to a macro level and see how a single, supposedly homogeneous language can mutate and fracture across borders. The Spanish language spans the globe, but its words live parallel, wildly different lives depending on exactly where you're standing. Check this out. If you ask for a torta in Spain or Argentina, you are going to be handed a sweet cake. But ask for one in Mexico and you're getting a sandwich. What about guagua?
Say that in Cuba or the Canary Islands, and you're waiting for a bus. Say it in Chile or the Andean region, and you are talking about a baby. And my absolute personal favorite, mono. In most of the Spanish-speaking world, it means a primate, but in Chile, it's a slang term for someone who is cute or pretty. It's just fascinating conversational trivia that proves a language is never, ever just one static thing.
Let's move to section 4 and see how this builds, the rebellion of language. So language doesn't just mutate horizontally across maps, it mutates vertically from generation to generation. Teenagers all across different cultures actively construct this fast-paced, totally incomprehensible lexicon of provocation and fun. And why do they do it? Well, it acts as a shield against the authoritarian adult world. It's designed by nature to be local and ephemeral, here today, gone tomorrow. And to build this language of rebellion, youth culture frequently borrows from marginalized groups. For instance, in Spain, modern youth slang pulls directly from the underground world and the Spanish Romani dialect. They use words like molar for something cool or curar for working. They are actively, purposely differentiating themselves from adults entirely through the power of vocabulary. Which brings us to section 5, traditions at the limit. Now we're going to look at some profound, really awe-inspiring cultural practices that push the absolute limits of our understanding, particularly regarding how different cultures process the end of life. For the Amazonian Yanomami tribe in Brazil and Venezuela, the idea of a loved one's body decomposing in the cold earth is just physically unthinkable. It goes against their deepest, most fundamental beliefs. Because of that, they have a profoundly different ritual. First, they cremate their deceased. Next, they mix those ashes into a vegetable soup. And finally, the entire family drinks the soup. To them, this isn't strange at all. It is the ultimate act of love and respect. It's seen as the only way to ensure the soul of their loved one can truly, finally find rest. Now, I want you to contrast that with Madagascar's Fama de Hana festival. Instead of a somber mourning of death, they beautifully celebrate rebirth. Every 7 years, families actually unearth the remains of their ancestors. They carefully wrap them in fresh, beautiful cloths, and then they carry them through the city, dancing with absolute joy. It is this vibrant, deeply physical celebration of continuity, proving that how we view existence is entirely a product of our cultural lens. And finally, section 6, the challenge of languages. So, the crucial point here is that truly understanding humanity requires us to navigate its most beautifully complex systems. And really, nothing represents that complexity quite like the hardest languages on our planet. I mean, if you want to learn Mandarin, you are tackling a colossal challenge. Logographic characters combined with 4 distinct tonal changes where the literal pitch of your voice completely alters a word's meaning. Arabic demands you master an entirely unique alphabet that reads right to left, where the very shape of a letter mutates depending on its position in a word. And Japanese, it intimidates learners by utilizing not 1, but 3 totally distinct writing systems, kanji, hiragana, and katakana, all layered over these incredibly convoluted levels of social formality. These aren't just communication tools, they are monumental, living architectures of human thought. We've seen how climates shape our vowels, how silence speaks volumes, and how culture dictates our deepest, most sacred traditions. So, if your language defines the literal boundaries of your world, what incredible parts of the human experience are you missing out on by not learning another? Think about that for a second. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep exploring and keep learning.